Hello and good afternoon, everybody. We are back with Craig. I was at a wedding all day yesterday. Craig put a video out, it's gone viral. Craig was the first person to report on YouTube when we had one alleged arsonist, but the numbers keep growing by the days. We've got 3 have been apprehended, and we've got in the conspiracy indictment now, they're saying there are unnamed others. So some of you may not be familiar with where we are to date, so I'm just going to go over this article, and we'll bring Craig in. So Keir Starmer suspects are part of a conspiracy, and others involved in attacks on properties linked to PM could still be at large, the police believe. So there's even more boy band members out there. If anyone sees anyone looking like one of these kids, then you might want to take action. All right, so 3 of the suspects charged are part of a conspiracy involving other unknown individuals. We've got Petro Pocknikock, 34. I'll get the photos up actually so you can see what the big deal is. There they are. Petro is the guy on the left, and he is supposedly 34 years old now, charged with conspiring with his 2 co-defendants alongside with others unknown to commit the fire with intent to endanger life. Suggestions that there were others unknown in plans behind the fires of early May indicates a much wider involvement in the attacks relating to the Prime Minister, with some individuals possibly still at large. Ukrainian national Pocknikock appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court on the 21st, where it was alleged that he conspired with fellow Ukrainian Roman and Ukrainian-born Romanian national Stanislav, both aspiring models, folks. There's still a media blackout on their other aspirations, let's just say. 2 of the fires, the charges relate to, occurred in Kentish Town, North London. One in the early hours of May 12th at the home where Sir Keir lived before he became Prime Minister and moved into Downing Street. The second occurred when a car was set alight in the same street on May 8th. And the third took place on May 11th at the front door of a house converted into flats in Islington. So there's much more in this article. But from what I'm reading here, the mainstream media are somewhat catching up with Craig, but they're still doing a blackout on the true origins of these gentlemen you can see on the screen right now. Is that where we're at, Craig?
Yeah, it's getting a bit more bonkers by the hour, and what is refreshing is we've spoken about this for days now, and when we started talking about it, we were quite sure we were on the right track, but because nobody else followed in with it, you're thinking, have I misread this? Have I, got some duff information? But what I'm quite glad about over the last few days, the mainstream are actually validating everything that I'm saying and you're saying, because the first thing they validated was a photograph, the one to the right, where the BBC used it within a few hours, about an hour of me using it. And then the Daily Mail yesterday, the Polychuck guy, the guy on the left with no chin, there was 2 loads of people saying different things about him. One was acting on a Facebook page under his name, and I was acting on the LinkedIn profile, which I felt was more probable because of the dates in it tied in with when he would go to school. And the Daily Mail have actually confirmed that now, because they have quoted things out his LinkedIn profile. So with the right guy with that all along. And the other thing, that the second guy they were trying to suggest was Romanian. And right away I said, well, this is a bit weird, because the guy I think it is, who turned out to be right, because it's the same photograph, I said he's probably from Romanian heritage, but I'm seeing him born in the Ukraine. So I don't know if they just didn't want to be going Ukrainian, and everybody think this is tied to the war, and they were trying to give us a bum steer, or the mainstream had it wrong initially, and lo and behold, this guy, 50-odd-year-old from Glasgow, that's not a journalist, just a YouTube channel, had it right from the off. So it is quite heartening that, you do get a wee bit nervous, and you think, have I really made a complete fool of myself here? But everything that we've been saying is gradually being confirmed by the mainstream, who are looking about 24, 48 hours behind new media on this one, which is fantastic.
So I'm going to continue to read this article then, so we can just get everyone up to speed on where we're at with this story. So, Lavriovich, 21, the 21-year-old, was charged with 3 counts with intent to endanger life in connection with the fires. Karpyuk, whose aspirations include to become the top model in the entire world, appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court on Tuesday, was remanded in custody to appear alongside his co-defendant. All 3 are denying the charges against them. Remanded in custody by Judge Daniel Sternberg to appear at the Old Bailey on June the 6th. A LinkedIn profile under Pockinock's name described him as a private entrepreneur who seeks to build his own fashion retail business. Wearing a grey prison-issue tracksuit, Pockinock spoke only to confirm his identity at a short court hearing where he was assisted by an interpreter. There was no application for bail, and the judge remanded him in custody. Pockinock was arrested on Monday morning in Chelsea, West London, by the Met counter-terrorism officers. 6 officers were spotted carrying bags of evidence out of the front door of his Holloway property with a police warrant seen by the Times, allegedly confirming that they'd searched the inside of the flat. Meanwhile, Karpyuk from Romford was arrested on Saturday at Luton Airport by counter-terrorism from the Eastern Region of Special Operations Unit as he was about to catch a Wizz Air flight to Romania. He appeared to have previously lived at the Holloway address with Pockinock. Sir Keir's £2 million private home in Kentish Town area of North London, which he had let to his sister-in-law after relocating to 10 Downing Street following his election win, was set alight in the early hours of May 12th. The London Fire Brigade alerted police to reports of a fire at 1:35 a.m. and got it under control within 20 minutes, with the blaze damaging the porch of the property. It came just 24 hours after a flat the Prime Minister previously lived at in the nearby Islington area caught fire in the early hours of Sunday morning. So firefighters attended the blaze, helping one person to safety with the door of the property suffering fire damage. On May 8th, same street as his Kentish Town property, a car he sold to a neighbour last year also burst into flames. The new owner of the Toyota RAV4 is understood to have thought the fire started because of a faulty battery. It's a hybrid car. It was completely destroyed in the blaze, which occurred on VE Day. All 3 targets of the arson attacks have previous connections with a high-profile public figure, the Met confirmed. As a result, officers from the Force's Counter-Terrorism Command are leading the investigation into the incidents, and anyone with information can contact the police on 101, quoting CAD 441/12. So if you see any boy band members running around with matchsticks who could possibly unnamed co-conspirators 4+, then that is the number to call. And the Counter-Terrorism Command, also known as the SO15, is the unit within the Met Police responsible for leading counter-terrorism-related investigations and prevent work across London. It also provides support to other police forces and national agencies, including international operations. It provides support to the Eastern Region Special Operations Unit and other forces as needed, including hosting national and international functions like the War Crimes Team and International Operations Team. They collect and analyze intelligence to identify terrorist plots and vulnerabilities. They provide operational support to the National Counterterrorism Policing Network. So, Craig, you know, as you're digesting this information in the news, I know we had some early theories about this, but now we know a little more. No thanks, you know, there's no deep dives done here yet on these guys. How have your theories shaped as more information has come to light?
Well, I think, like any crime, there must be a motive because it's not an accident. And I think there's only 2 motives possible. That is, it's some dark force wanting to dent the national security of the United Kingdom, or theory 2 is it's something personal to do with Starmer in his private life. And I kind of think if it was some clandestine plan, master plan by some evil powers, they would probably have picked more adequate people to carry it out. So I'm still saying it's more likely to be something because of Starmer's private life, and that's kind of where I am just now, and that's not really changed since day one.
All right, so I am leaning towards then the fact that it was 3 separate occasions shows a conspiracy, and we've already got 3 co-defendants, so it's definitely a conspiracy and possibly more. But I'm thinking they wanted to get this in the news. Someone wanted to get this in the news. It reminds me of the time when Roger Clinton, Bill Clinton's half-brother, was arrested buying the white powder. And when he was buying the white powder from an undercover cop, he happened to mention that some of this is for Bill. He's got a nose like a vacuum cleaner. And when all that went down, the cop knew if he didn't get it in the news as soon as possible, the Clinton crime family would come in, cover it up. It would never see the light of day. And this cop would probably be reprimanded. So he got it in the news immediately so the Clintons couldn't cover it up and back down. What they did was they turned it around and said, we're not above the law. Roger will go to prison. The laws apply to everyone, blah, 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 to make themselves look really virtuous. And Roger ended up getting a pardon for it anyway. So it looks to me like strategically, if you set fire to somebody's property, whether it's a house or a car, and the emergency services are called, that's forcing it into the news right away at the inception of the crime. So you got 3 separate incidents being forced into the news, all related to Keir Starmer, which is going to cause huge suspicions to fall upon him. And the fact that the media is in lockstep, not, as you have wisely pointed out on your videos, interviewing the classmates of these guys, the parents of these guys, the school teachers, and going over the entire history of how they came to the country, etc. The fact that the media has not done that, the media is in lockstep, it shows to me that it was pushed into the media by this conspiracy, and now the mainstream media, they're allowing it to go as far as it can go because it's been pushed into the domain, but they're not letting it go any further than that. They're not exploring the bigger picture here of as to whether this is some kind of lovers fallout or it is a honey trap operation. And both theories are not mutually exclusive. For example, if you are in bed with Zelensky, and Zelensky's been known to do all kinds of fruity activities on stage when he was a comedian, including playing the piano with his pecker and mincing up and down in drag. So he's probably got connections that he could utilize if, our leader is leaning towards those proclivities, let's just say, to be polite. Zelensky could have hooked him up, but Zelensky could have also used that as compromat down the road if the money is not going to keep flowing to Ukraine, if the weapons are not going to keep flowing to Ukraine, if we need to get Trump back in line, whatever it is. I believe, many of the leaders of the world are compromised, or that there's attempts to compromise them, and there could have been some activities performed with these lads, but they also could have been acting as agents of the state as well. What are your thoughts on what I'm proposing there, Craig?
It's possible, but I tell you what I think's a bit weird. You were talking about the way this is playing out in the media, and it was sort of forced into the media. But what we need to remember is these 3 acts happened in 3 separate days over the period of 4 or 5, 6 days, something like that. But we didn't hear about any of them until the last one had happened. And that probably just ties in with when the guy was probably arrested, looking at when he eventually ended up in court. So it's not been instant. And I'm like, I can't figure this out. And it does look as if you're right in what you're saying with the narrative in the media. They're only putting out what they need to put out no more, no less. If somebody turns up at court, that's in the public domain and court rolls. So that, they're putting out that in an age and nothing else. Apart from yesterday, the article that you're reading in the one in the Daily Mail, I think you're using, when the police obviously want help now, and the police are putting out a request for people to help them without telling them who they're looking for. It's not as if they're saying, we're looking for another gang of Ukrainians. We reckon they're in their 20 to 30s and, they live in the south side of London. They're giving away no information. They're just saying, could you help us, please, and phone Crime Stoppers. And this isn't unique to this case, though. There was a famous case just last week, a week before, up in Glasgow, where there was a 13-year-old was raped. And the police put out asking for help, and the description they gave out was men in their 30s, two of them, one medium build and one with grey trousers on. And you think, you must have more. You might have a skin colour. Did they have a beard? Did they not have a beard? Did they have a hat on? And then the following day, they arrested them, and they were two teenagers. And you're like, what is going on? And the amount of people, there's a crime just been committed just before we came on here, where a man's entered a hospital in Glasgow with a crossbow. And again, it's one of these crazy things where there's no description. And it seems to be the way the narrative is right now, that the media, the police, everybody's scared to put names out, which can generally point to ethnicity, can't remember how you say that properly, or photographs of them. And this kind of appears to be a new thing for me. Back in the day, it was the police are looking for a white male with a ginger beard, about 5'10", for, committing some crime. We don't get that anymore. We get the terror police are looking for help. And all they've done is, if anybody knows anything, here's a phone number. And I don't get it. It's just bonkers, mate. And it's driving me up the wall. It's driving me insane.
A lot of people are asking, why aren't they fighting for Ukraine? They're avoiding that meat grinder to be in another kind of meat grinder, apparently. So, all right, we've got a question here. Could it be that the HIV test was taken by Starmer because someone was making accusations? What do you know about that, Craig?
Well, I think everybody knows, for some bizarre reason, he came out publicly and said he had an HIV test, and nobody was asking him about HIV tests. So that was a bit bizarre. That was almost like, I need to tell somebody somewhere about this, and I've got no way of contacting them, so I'll just get the national press to run a story that I've had an AIDS test. And that was proper nuts, right? And this whole thing is proper nuts. But just because the two things are proper nuts doesn't mean that they're connected. They could be connected. It's just more nutty things going on in the life of Starmer. And do you know what everybody's forgot about? And this was another video that I'd done that went quite well. The train with Macron and the German geezer. And Starmer comes on, and there was wee packets of stuff getting hidden, and potentially scratches in tables, or bits of powder, or little spoons for taking narcotics. Choose whichever ones you wish. The German guy hiding that with his arm, and the French guy sort of palming off this sort of thing that looked like crumpled up something. That's just finished. Nobody's talking about that now. And we're all talking about this. But there's so many nutty things happen spinning around Starmer. And by the way, I'm no fan of Labour Party. I'm no fan of the Tories either. I think between the two of them, they've managed to actually destroy our country. But what we do need, and I'm not defending the guy, but Boris Johnson basically stood down for having folk round for cake, right? And you're like, okay, well, what about this guy? The world's gone crazy. And it's just another mental thing, the HIV test with Starmer. You're going, Ali buying him clothes, Ali putting his son up in a house. All this, it's just madness, absolute madness.
So Alan's got a good point here. Looks coordinated. Were these guys known to the police or the three-letter agencies? Models don't just start firing up Starmer's private places out of the blue. What you find, Alan, when you investigate a lot of these plots, you find that somebody in some neighborhood has mouthed off they're going to do something. And then you've got some snitch calls the person in. And then MI5 come in, or if in America, the feds come in, and they cultivate the plot with the person who's mouthed off, sell them, parts. They'll do a sting operation where they're selling them some parts and to explode something or other. And then they'll make a big news story out of it we foiled this terror plot. This guy was. My point here is, more often than not, when the government announces they've stopped some huge plot, it's a plot they've pretty much cultivated themselves with someone who's either mentally ill or running their mouth somewhere, and they've homed in on that person and they've encouraged them to further the plot, and they announce these things as big media publicity stunts to make the public feel safe. So Alan's made a good point here, because that's often the case, that when these people are arrested, they always have some kind of history with the authorities or with the three letter agencies. But in this case, Alan, as we said earlier, nobody's looking at this story in any depth because there's an absolute blackout on doing a deep dive. A few other YouTubers have jumped on in the last couple of days, but you know, we're not going to find out anything of that depth presently, I don't think. Do you think, Craig?
No, and again, I've been repeating this a few days now. The only way we would find out probably the motive behind this and any sort of details is if this trial goes to court and there's evidence having to be given by the prosecution to prove motive. You know, if it's as sorted as a lot of people are thinking, then there could be a lot of scary things for Keir Starmer come out in that environment. And I said this days after Southport, when people were saying, well, can't you wait to the trial and we'll find out what connections Starmer had, if any, and all this stuff. And I was like, well, that's kind of why it'll not get to trial. And I would be shocked and stunned. I might be wrong, but I'm shocked and stunned if this trial gets past the plea day. I think when they get to plead, they'll do what Rudy Cabana done, just say nothing, don't plead anything until right at the death. And the more you look back at the Rudy Cabana thing, the more weird it gets. Now, obviously, the guy's slightly mental, right? But his behaviour in court, where he was putting his head down and he was screaming stuff and he was refusing to plead, he actually never pled guilty to anything. He had to accept his plea from his lawyer because he refused to say the words guilty. And you think, well, I'm not suggesting he wasn't guilty, by the way. I'm just, giving my opinion on an actual event. And you think, well, was there something going on behind there that the guy is getting forced to say, I'm guilty, and he actually technically hasn't said that ever. I'm not suggesting he's not guilty. I think he's guilty of sin. And, I wish he'd get an even harsher sentence than he did. But that never went to trial. And I would be shocked and stunned if this does as well, just because of the potential problems it could give for a guy that's currently the Prime Minister of the UK.
I agree with you entirely. And in the event that it does go to trial, they will limit what they can say so nothing comes out about Sir Keir Starmer. And Carol's pointed something out here. If these guys didn't want to get caught, they wouldn't have done it. This was done by design. It was designed for them to get caught, and it was designed to put pressure on, I think.
What I would say is, though, I think, and you'll be able to give a better insight in this, nobody does something in the expectation of getting caught. Everybody does stuff expecting not to get caught. So I can't see these guys going into this saying, right, we'll keep burning things until we eventually get caught. I can't see that happening. And we all know loads of people that ended up, caught and charged and guilty of stuff that they just genuinely never thought to get caught for. And some of them always say they've never done it anyway. So I don't know. I can see it. I don't think it's probable. I think it's a possible, but I don't think this is a probable action that they done it to get caught.
Yeah, I think that these are just pawns, puppets, and they were probably just manipulated. But whoever's pulling the strings to put this pressure on Starmer knew it would create this end result where it would be forced into the media, and because there is a blackout, there's something there that's being protected from coming out, which now whoever put this conspiracy into play can hold over the Prime Minister. The threat of that coming out is now, it's got closer and closer because of the arrest of these individuals.
Shaun, I've never studied body language or looked too much into it, but I've got 25, 30 years in sales experience, and you kind of just pick stuff up without, a lot of people have studied body language to try and help improve their sales, but I haven't. So I picked stuff up, and you kind of got the feeling when somebody was nervous or somebody was talking rubbish, somebody was hiding something. And when I think back to Starmer, I don't think he's ever been the most confident person in the world. But certainly since he got into power, anytime I see him, he never looks comfortable. And the one that was the worst ever was the day he was there with in Trump's Oval Office. He looked as if he was a school kid in the headmaster's office. And anytime he's even talking in in Prime Minister's questions, I just kind of think he's really, really nervous. It's like the kid that's just about to get caught. And I don't know, is that me being silly, or do you see the same?
No, compared to Trump's swaggering body language, Starmer just looked subservient and infantile, obsequious. It was like he was slobbering all over Biden when he went out to visit Biden, and he wanted Biden to authorize the long-range missiles getting fired into Russia. Even in the presence of Biden, he just looked like a groveling fool. You know, and compared to Trump, looks even more of a sycophant. So, yeah, his body language is absolutely terrible. He's just a blank slate. His face, there's nothing in there. He's just the kind of person that you could just, you know, whatever your agenda is, he'll say anything you want, and he'll just do the complete opposite of what he tells the public, which is what he's done over and over and over. I mean, you know, my definition of a politician, at least one that gets to the top, because the well-meaning ones are held down, is someone who tells the public what they want to hear to get the votes, and then when they get elected, they do the complete opposite and just bow down to the vested interests.
Yeah, I've got a cracking idea how you stop that, though. I do a lot of X spaces, and I'm going to be standing for election to get into Holyrood, hopefully in May 2026. And a lot of people ask me, well, what would you change and stuff? And I came up with this idea. You know the way you get to the votes and they put a manifesto and they never ever do what they say, right? They just give you a list of stuff that you want to hear. You've knocked that in the head, right? Well, how about this? We have a midterm inquiry. So what you do is you pick a number. It could be 10, it could be 20. I don't care. You've got to list 20 things in your manifesto that you promise you'll do if you get into government. And then halfway through the term, we do an inquiry and we say, right, half that number. So if you put down, the number's 10, show me the 5 manifesto promises that you've actually delivered on right now. And if the answer is, well, we can't, well, that triggers a new election. And that would kind of force parties in to doing what they actually promise. Because if they've not done half in half the term, then we part them out and we go to the electorate again and we say, let's just have another election and vote. And because I'm fed up with it, you know, the SNP's famous one is we will abolish council tax. They went to they went into power on that promise, I think 3 elections ago, and I've never done it. This actually went up, right? And you go, why do you tell us? And we're actually worse because we continue to believe them, right, without holding them to account. And I think we should do stuff like that because the system we've got just now doesn't work. So we need to improve the system. But to improve the system ain't going to change itself, because why would you? If you're in the system now and you're earning quite a bit from it, you're not going to change it. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So what we first need to do is we need to change the people. And we need to get normal people elected into these places to try and start then making a difference. Because the ones doing it now ain't going to do it. And as you say, there are some good politicians out there, but they kind of get pushed down all the time. So we need to start making differences. And I think that would be a great thing. Midterm audit, let's call it that. And we agree a number, whether it's 10 or 20 or whatever. And if you ain't hit half of those promises in half the time in term, you're parked out, gone. And the only thing you need to say is,